Imagine you're a TV executive. Someone walks into your office and says, "I've got an idea. It's about a sponge. He lives in a pineapple at the bottom of the ocean and works in a burger restaurant." You'd probably think they were joking. Now imagine the next person walks in. "I've got a cartoon about three boys. They're all called Ed. The entire show is basically them trying to scam their neighbours." Then another. "A dog that's terrified of absolutely everything, but somehow ends up saving the world every single week." On paper, these ideas sound completely ridiculous. So how did they become some of the greatest cartoons ever made? Today, we're finding out. Welcome back to Retro Dive. This series, we're going to be looking at the cartoons we grew up with and discover why some of the strangest ideas ever pitched somehow became timeless classics. Let's begin. At number 7, we're going to start with Johnny Bravo, because honestly, this show should have been a one-joke cartoon. The entire premise is incredibly simple. A muscular man with an enormous ego who believes every woman he meets will instantly fall in love with him. Instead, every single episode he gets rejected. That's it. That's the joke. And yet, Johnny Bravo ran for 4 seasons and became one of Cartoon Network's biggest early hits. So why? Because Johnny himself was never really the joke. His confidence was. The writers constantly found new ways to completely destroy his oversized ego. One minute he'd be trying to impress someone with his muscles, the next he'd accidentally embarrass himself in a spectacular fashion. And because Johnny almost never learned from his mistakes, every episode felt like watching an inevitable train wreck. You knew exactly what was going to happen, but you still wanted to see how it happened this time. That's what great comedy does. It takes a simple idea and finds endless creative ways to make it feel fresh. Number 6. Now let's talk about Ed, Edd and Eddy. Because if you describe the show to someone who'd never seen it, it sounds unbelievably repetitive. 3 boys, living on one cul-de-sac, trying to earn enough money for jawbreakers. Every episode. Again, and again, and again. On paper, that shouldn't work. Most cartoons constantly introduce new locations, new villains, or new adventures. Ed, Edd and Eddy barely left the neighbourhood. So why didn't audiences get bored? Because the scams were never the real story. The real entertainment came from the characters. Ed's unbelievable stupidity, Double D's constant planning, Eddy's endless confidence. Every scheme fell apart, not because the idea was bad, but because these 3 personalities were guaranteed to clash. The setting almost didn't matter. You could put these 3 characters anywhere, and they'd still find a way to turn a simple afternoon into complete chaos. That's why people remember the characters, not the scams. So we've looked at 2 cartoons with incredibly simple ideas. But next, we're talking about a show that somehow convinced millions of children to fall in love with being scared. And that's where things get really interesting. Imagine trying to sell this idea. A dog, who's terrified of absolutely everything, lives in the middle of nowhere with an elderly couple. Every single week, something horrifying turns up. A mummy, an alien, a ghost, a monster, and somehow, this became one of Cartoon Network's most beloved series. That shouldn't have worked. Most children's cartoons wanted kids to feel excited. Courage wanted them to feel nervous. Even today, some episodes are genuinely unsettling. The floating CGI face from King Ramses' curse, the disturbing atmosphere in Freaky Fred, the lonely emptiness of nowhere. But that's exactly why Courage became unforgettable. The monsters weren't really the point, fear was. Every episode asked the same question. What would you do if you were terrified, but nobody else could save the people you loved? Courage always answered that question the same way. He was scared, he panicked, he screamed, and then he did it anyway. That's why millions of people still remember him. Because courage isn't about never being afraid, it's about doing what's right, even when you're terrified. Now number 4. Now imagine pitching this to Nickelodeon. A cartoon about an alien pretending to be a human child so he can secretly conquer Earth. Oh, and his robot assistant is completely useless. That already sounds strange, but Invader Zim went much further. Its humour was darker, its animation looked different, its characters behaved in ways that felt completely unpredictable. Compared to other Nickelodeon shows at the time, it almost felt like it came from another planet, which, in fairness, it did. So why did people love it? Because it never tried to be normal. Instead of copying what was already popular, Invader Zim fully embraced being weird. Every episode felt unpredictable. The exaggerated expressions, the strange technology, the bizarre dialogue, even the background art looked unlike almost anything else on television. The show wasn't trying to appeal to everyone. And ironically, that's exactly why so many people still remember it. Sometimes, being different is exactly what makes something impossible to forget. So far, we've looked at cartoons that embraced comedy, fear, and complete chaos. But now, we're talking about 2 shows that became worldwide phenomena. And somehow, their ideas were even stranger. 3 kindergarten girls, created in a lab, by accident, after someone spills a mysterious substance called Chemical X. Oh, and they spend their free time saving an entire city from giant monsters, supervillains, and evil monkeys. That sounds absolutely ridiculous, but that's exactly why it worked. The Powerpuff Girls never tried to explain its world, it simply expected you to accept it. One minute, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup are arguing over bedtime. The next, they're fighting a giant monster destroying Townsville. And somehow, it never feels out of place. That's because underneath all the action, the show was really about three sisters. They argued, competed, annoyed each other, protected each other. The superhero battles were exciting, but it was their personalities that kept audiences coming back. Each girl felt completely different. Blossom was the leader, Bubbles was the heart, Buttercup was the fighter. Every viewer had a favourite, and that simple emotional connection turned one of the strangest superhero concepts ever created into one of Cartoon Network's biggest successes. Now let's talk about the cartoon that almost everyone knows. Moving on to number 2, because if you remove the nostalgia, the basic idea is unbelievable. A sea sponge who lives inside a pineapple at the bottom of the ocean, works as a fry cook, his best friend is a starfish, his neighbour is a grumpy squid, and somehow this became one of the biggest cartoons in television history. So what happened? Simple. The world made sense. Even when nothing else did, every character had a clear personality, every location felt familiar. Bikini Bottom wasn't just a setting, it felt like a real place. And because the writers committed completely to that world, viewers accepted everything. Even when the stories became completely absurd, the imagination never stopped. Jellyfishing, bubble blowing, rock bottom, the hash slinging slasher, band geeks, every episode introduced something memorable, not because the premise was realistic, but because the characters made you believe it. Sometimes, the strangest ideas become timeless, if the world around them feels real. Every cartoon we've talked about today sounded strange, but none of them were built around an idea as simple as this. A cat chasing a mouse over and over and over again. No complicated mythology, no huge cast, almost no dialogue, just one chase, repeated for decades. That sounds impossible, yet Tom and Jerry became one of the most successful animated series ever created. Why? Because it proved something every great cartoon understands. Execution beats concept. Every chase felt different. Different traps, different locations, different endings, different ideas. The animation carried the storytelling. Every moment mattered. Every expression told part of the joke. Even without words, you always understood exactly what each character was thinking. That's incredibly difficult to achieve. And maybe that's the biggest lesson from every cartoon we've discussed today. The idea doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be executed brilliantly. That's why a cowardly dog, a sponge, 3 children named Ed, and a cat chasing a mouse didn't just become successful, they became classics. Looking back, it's easy to think these cartoons were always destined to succeed, but they weren't. Each one started with an idea that sounded strange, unusual, or completely ridiculous. What made them timeless wasn't the premise, it was the creativity, the writing, the characters, and the willingness to fully commit to an idea that nobody else would have dared to make. Maybe that's why we still remember them today, not because they made sense, but because they didn't. If you enjoyed this episode of Retro Dive Investigates, let me know what topic we should investigate next. And if this video brought back some memories, don't forget to subscribe, because we've got plenty more cartoon mysteries to solve. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Retro Dive.